This is the game I just finished called The Demise of Flappy Bird. And this is Dong Nguyen, the creator of the original mobile game. Now you may be asking yourself, what is he doing exactly, and why the heck are there so many of him? Well, I can explain. As you might recall, back in 2014, Flappy Bird was all the rage. Its simple but addictive gameplay had people all around the world tapping their cell phone screens incessantly. It seemed like everyone was obsessed with Flappy Bird. But just as Flappy Bird was soaring in popularity, Dong shocked us all and removed his viral hit sensation from the App Store. So what happened? Well, Dong was a solo developer in Vietnam, and by all accounts seemed like a pretty nice and decent guy. But as it turned out, he was a rather private person and didn't like all the attention and controversy Flappy Bird was causing. Internet commentators and news agencies around the world picked up on the story of the viral game and questioned whether it was too addictive, too boring, or worthy of all the fame.
And empty a full clip directly into the Flappy Bird. And that's the best way to play Flappy Bird.
On top of that, as a person who had himself struggled with overplaying video games in the past, he began to question if he had in fact created something harmful and addictive. So with all the increasing scrutiny and guilt he was feeling, Dong decided to pull the plug on his very successful game. Nowadays, Flappy Bird is one of those games that almost every new game developer makes because it's so recognizable and the mechanics are so simple. You can browse the internet and find all kinds of twists on the original premise. There's Flappy Bird in 3D, first-person Flappy Bird, Minecraft Flappy Bird. There's Splashy Fish, Flappy Plane, Flappy Disc, and the list goes on and on. So when I set out to make my own version of the game, I knew the challenge would be coming up with something original, but still true to the source material. So I decided I wanted my game to focus on the story of Flappy Bird's creator. I wanted it to honor Dong's experience and tell the story of Flappy Bird from his unique perspective. And so began the development of The Demise of Flappy Bird, a second-person perspective on success and happiness. The first thing I did was make a simple 2D sprite of Flappy Bird. Fun fact, his name is actually Flappy. Then I animated his wing so it looks like he's flapping. Next, I created the two-dimensional background from the original mobile game. I'm keeping the aspect ratio 9:16, so it's the size of a phone screen. It's pretty simple. There's just a tree line, a few buildings, and some clouds. Then I made the striped foreground. Next, I made the pipes that Flappy Bird has to fly between. I kept each element on separate layers so that when I imported them into Unity, they could be moved independently. To make the foreground look like it's scrolling, I put it on its own layer, then made a duplicate of it. Then I programmed it so that when one part of the foreground has scrolled the length of the screen, it is immediately reset to the front of the second part of the foreground. Then I coded it so that the pipes will endlessly spawn and scroll at the same speed as the foreground. This is what it looks like all together in the game view. Then I added some physics to Flappy so he'll fall to the ground unless you make him flap. Okay, great. Our 2D version of the game is working and it's time to set it up in a 3D environment. This might be a good time to explain what I mean by the game having a second-person perspective. I'm interpreting second person to mean that the player is experiencing a first-person view of someone playing a third-person game. In our case, we'll be playing as Dong, playing his own game. So next, I found a 3D model of an iPhone. Then I brought it into Blender and changed all the textures to black. Next, I set up a camera that captures the 2D Flappy Bird game we coded earlier and projects the image as a texture on the 3D model of the iPhone we just made. Like this. And later, the 2D game will have to be hidden somewhere in the 3D environment so that the player can't see it. Next, I needed to create a 3D model of Dong. To do this, I used an asset I got from the Unity Asset Store that allows you to quickly generate low-poly characters that are pre-rigged for animation. Then I went on Mixamo and found a free texting while walking animation, which I dropped into our model of Dong. Then I carefully positioned the camera right above his hand so that we'll be looking down at the phone as he walks. But there's a problem here. Because Dong's phone hand is anchored to his body in the rest of the walking animation, it moves around too much. We need his hand to be perfectly steady so we can play Flappy Bird without the phone jostling around. And this is where things started to get a little weird. Because I wasn't sure how to detach Dong's hand and arm from the rest of his body, I just duplicated the entire model of him and used that to hold the phone. Then I coded it so that when the player presses space, Dong's thumb will tap on the screen. Lastly, I positioned it cleverly to look like Dong's original right hand, so no one will be the wiser. He's just a normal looking guy playing his favorite Flappy Bird game. Then I remembered I'd also have to animate Dong's left hand later on. Luckily, I already knew how to handle this situation. Excellent, Dong is good to go. Now that I had the basic Flappy Bird game working, I wanted to add some kind of original gameplay element to it. After some thought, I decided to make it so that as the player / Dong is trying to play Flappy Bird, the phone will keep getting notifications that block the screen and make it harder to play. The player will have to close the notifications with their mouse as they continue flapping and avoiding pipes. This makes the game a bit of a multitasking challenge. And to tell the story of what Dong may have been experiencing, the notifications that pop up will be actual comments and news headlines about Flappy Bird that were circulating at the time. As the game progresses, the comments will get more negative and frequent to portray the building pressure on Dong. I also use a text-to-speech program to read the text of the comments out loud so that the player will hear them as they play the game.
New comment: who would make such a dumb game anyway?
Next, I created a landscape for our Dong character to walk around in while he's playing his Flappy Bird game. I imagined him walking around a noisy big city with cars and people shuffling past him. For this, I used our trusty Unity Asset Store asset again so that I wouldn't have to model the entire thing from scratch. And to speed things up even more, I just took chunks from the demo city that came with the asset and plopped them into my game. I did end up modeling a park from scratch though, because I knew that would be the final destination of Dong's journey. At the end of the game, Dong removes his game from the App Store and sits quietly on a bench in the park. Oh, and I hid the 2D Flappy Bird game inside this building over here so the player can't see it. With the city made, I animated a path for Dong to walk along. When he gets to the street intersections, he will look both ways and he'll occasionally look down at his feet or avoid obstacles on the sidewalk. Now to animate some street traffic. I did this by downloading an asset made by our good friend Sebastian Legge that allows you to easily make curved paths in your game. This was especially useful for making the cars smoothly navigate around corners. All I had to do was draw the paths using his tool and set up the cars to follow along them. Oops, let me change the orientation of the paths. Let's try that one more time. There we go. Now we've got some traffic. Now to add some NPCs to the scene to make the city feel more lively. I used the low poly character creator from before and quickly made a bunch of random NPCs. Then I went back to Mixamo and downloaded some animations to bring them to life. This guy is calling his mom. This couple is having a nice lunch. These people are dancing on the side of the street for some reason. Then I added sounds to the game. I wanted it to sound like Dong is walking around a real city. To achieve this, I placed all the sound effects in 3D space so it would sound like the cars are actually whizzing by and that you're walking past the open door of a busy restaurant. And we can't forget the sounds that are in the original Flappy Bird game, especially that annoying but iconic punching sound effect for when you run into a pipe. Lastly, I made a title screen and a graphic to explain the controls of the game. Excellent, the game's done. Now let's see if we can beat this crazy contraption. Alright, I just gotta tap a couple times and get through the pipe. One pipe down. You have to get through 99 pipes to beat the game. Couple taps.
Text message from mom. Dong, there are reporters outside our house again.
Alright, let's try this again. Alright, I've gotten pretty far this time.
A Mario ripoff. Some critics say yes.
Just have to remember to close the notifications as soon as they open so they don't get in the way.
New comment. This game is impossible to beat.
Alright, I can beat this game. Okay,
Dong,
let's
the reporters keep calling.
Oh.
Bird so much. Once again.
Alright, it's for real this time. The beginning's not so bad now.
New comment. Flappy Bird is like crack.
Alright, I'm a little over halfway.
Text message from mom. Dog, can you come home? Score of 10. After 5
Alright,
hours.
I'm close to the end. I think I got it this time.
My kids broke their phones because of this game. New comment. Flappy
Okay,
Bird is
we've made it to the
unoriginal
park.
play. News headline. Is Nintendo suing Flappy Bird creator?
I just have a
Text
couple
message from
pipes
Dad.
left.
Dong, the reporters are saying you're being sued. I heard the developer paid for fake reviews and downloads. The game looks just like Mario.
Oh, I'm really
Message
close.
From mom. Are you being sued? Dong. News headline. Chicago teen stabs brother over Flappy Bird.
If I could just get through these last couple ones, I'll be there.
News headline. 10 reasons why you should quit playing Flappy Bird.
Well, that's as far as I could go. This is what the ending looks like if you think you can get that far. Game's in the description, and I'll see you next time.